Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Anant. We're doing this thing again.
We're doing this. We were supposed to do one last week, and
Yes.
then I was at an IBM conference, and I really had a great time. But then I came back with an unpleasant present COVID. So that's why we had to cancel last week's. But that's super awesome. We were able to get back on schedule with James, and we'll just keep on rolling.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a great topic this time around, getting deep into the developer ecosystem. And so that's going to be pretty cool. Looking forward to the conversation with him. Let's kick things off with some of the things we've been seeing out in the news. What's your favorite topic, Anant?
I've got two. One is AI and bubble and chips and everything else. I both you and I cannot remain just software folks. We have to develop some expertise in chips because unlike our previous 30 years in life, sorry, in work life at least, right, where chips were abstracted away by operating system, I think chips is where a lot of the action is. So that's what I'm trying to read up on. Uh, and clearly you saw tons and tons of partnerships between OpenAI and AMD, and of course OpenAI and NVIDIA and everything else. And it all seems like the way Apple kind of created a market for itself by kind of cornering the best supply chain. That's what some of these large model providers are doing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think that we're in that phase where much actually the same way that during the 70s and 80s that hardware co-evolved with software very synergistically, that we're seeing many of those same things. In fact, as a number of people know, I'm a big fan of the computer history of the
Yes.
of that time period, and I do a lot of hobbyist work in that stuff, but a lot of actually there's been a lot written lately about this, that there are a lot of things that are, aspects or affordances of instruction sets and so on that came about because computer architecture co-evolved with the C language taking off and all of that. And so it's not that surprising, through that lens, that one would expect the model providers and a lot of the work that's being done around building training models would be in a very fast feedback loop with what's happening with the chip designs and all of that, and of course, um, this time around on a just much more accelerated cycle, which I think is part of why we see so much activity and so much investment and so much partnerships, because there's a lot at stake in getting these thoughts implemented in hardware very quickly, and has been super exciting to watch that.
Awesome. And the other thing that happened was that IBM announced a partnership with Grok. And of
Yeah.
course, I've been kind of involved in it for some time. And as I started to read up, I realized that while kind of GPUs obviously are take kind of a lot of center stage when it comes to training, there isn't anything uh, like GPUs out there. But when it comes to inferencing, we can actually begin to have some specialized chips. And Grok is a phenomenal example of reimagining how some of the inferencing work can be done on things that are structured slightly differently than kind of classic GPUs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that it seems like there's a lot of pieces for inferencing that are ripe for optimization. For people who have gone and done much with local models, and there's a lot of interesting hardware now coming out for that. But it turns out that memory bandwidth becomes one of the important pieces for inferencing, and of course I've seen some interesting approaches that dramatically cut down the needs for that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done for reimagining these systems. So that's pretty exciting too.
It's really, really exciting. Awesome. And then one more thing that I wanted to just talk about. So at the conference, we were having fun on the keynote day two. As you know, the stuff that you have helped build, Langflow and others, occupied somewhat of a central stage, and it all worked. It all worked. Thank you so much to your team and everything
I
else.
love the way you added that, and it really worked.
It absolutely worked. Though, of course, in the middle, it's not that important, but it was a bit slow, and I said, "How can it not work? It's IBM." And then I held my breath. I said, "Oh my God, if if something happens after that, I'll have a big egg on my face." But what was interesting was we did a poll of what do you think is going to happen in in the world of AI, and we began by asking AI what it thinks will happen in the world of AI. And obviously, AI didn't predict AGI or death to all of us, which is all awesome. But then we took a poll for people, and then what actually came about was the second highest vote getter was the data infrastructure, is what people believe is something that really, really a lot more investment needs to be done. Of course, agents was number one as terms of what people picked as the most important thing that will happen in the next, but kind of data infrastructure. So both of those were quite eye opening for me as we were talking to the developers and the technologists in the audience.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think a lot of realization around. I mean, obviously, you and I have been talking about this for ages, but the data infrastructure pieces for people who are building systems. Even for folks, when I talk with developers who start talking to me, and we'll actually get into some of these issues later, where they start talking about things that went wrong in systems that they built, or this, that, or the other, and you often, I would say, you trace back those issues as much to sort of data infrastructure choices as things that happen at the model level or anywhere else in the stack. And so I think you're going to see those intertwined, and it doesn't surprise me at all that's what developers in the audience and such we're talking about.
Awesome. Ed, why don't you introduce the topic for today? And then
Well,
we'll
sure.
welcome our speaker.
Great. Well, so what we are going to talk about is really the shifts in how, well, in some cases, not so much shifts, really sort of repeating the patterns we've seen about developers as, the people who really set the strategy and make the choices that really define whether a new technology is going to succeed or not, and what the form factors are, and the architectures and so on, and really comes down to developer choices. And so how developers think about AI is a really critical, defining factor on how quickly we are going to see these AI applications and AI use cases, become mainstream. And so we're really lucky to have James Governor, who has been one of the only analyst firms that has focused on AI, with RedMonk and so on, and has been in this space tracking everything that's happening in developers for a very long time, and so we're really excited to be able to have him hang out with us and talk about what he's seeing in this space. So
Uh,
welcome, James.
welcome, James, from somewhere across the pond. Uh,
Yeah, I'm here in
it's
London, and very very happy to join you today.
awesome. So, uh, first things first, right? I mean, one of the things that James, you and I have chatted a lot about this topic also is that the pace of innovation in this space is just extraordinarily high. It isn't anything like that we have seen before. It's like that the entire world, the entire research world, the entire investment has all jumped onto AI. And the net of it is that even though there is some amount of kind of let me sell you kneehighsocks.com kind of thing happening out there. But mostly it is some really, really fundamental innovations that are happening. And enterprises love innovation, but they also want it at a slightly measured pace. So how are you seeing kind of the balance between this kind of rapid innovation and kind of enterprise adoption? And let's maybe take MCP as an example and just do a bit of a deep dive on what's really happening and whether it's good for enterprises and industry with respect to MCP.
Okay, so I mean, MCP is an interesting one, and to your point, look, we are in a period of extremely rapid innovation, iteration. The feedback loops are extremely short, and we're really not used to seeing sort of standardization at the sort of pace we're currently seeing it. So if we think about MCP, that's a technology that was basically launched sort of November last year, and within weeks, frantically, beginning of the year, I say practically, frantically is probably the right word. Within weeks, we had enterprise vendors coming and showing off, hey, look, we've got an MCP story. Now, some of that I think is you need an AI story. I know we can MCP enable some of our back ends. MCP is the new hello world for an enterprise software company, which is great. I mean, it was interesting because this was a standardization. Normally, standardization, you'd expect there'd be some cool startup and an IBM, or some cool startup and a Microsoft or a Google. That's the world of standardization that we all grew up with. Not this time. This was 100% standardization driven by two AI vendors. So Anthropic creates the standard, OpenAI says, sure, okay, let's do it. And everyone falls into line. Now, just because a bunch of vendors are saying here is a way of front-ending some back-end services to create, enable sort of conversations between agents and so on from an AI perspective, from a developer perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean that enterprises want to be jumping wholeheartedly into that. So, if you're a database vendor, and Anant, you know a little bit about databases, yeah, the database vendors are very much sort of saying, actually, guys, this MCP thing is not for production, okay? So we've got a standard, but whether that's truly enterprise ready is open to question. And I guess in answer to your question to me, the pace of innovation is so furious. There are going to be missteps. There are going to be mistakes you want other people to make. And my colleague Rachel Stevens has been writing recently about we're in a bit of a position at the moment where it's like a snake swallowing its prey. So the jaw unlocks and we've sort of swallowed the elephant. We're in a Little Prince sort of scenario, and I think from an enterprise perspective, that's quite a lot. That's quite a lot. They may bite off more than they can chew. So, what would I say? Yes.
There were like 7 metaphors or analogies in that little. Okay, very good, awesome.
What I would say is, look, enterprise organizations don't always need to do the new thing. By all means, have someone in the team that's experimenting with it. Yes, we've been through the digital transformation. Now it's the AI transformation. But the technology will find you where you are. It's going to be hard to avoid. With a IBM Salesforce behind it, everybody's going to be buying some AI. We see the sorts of shenanigans that we're seeing from companies like Salesforce and Microsoft, getting their customers to adopt more of this. You start giving away the farm as long as you can call it an AI win. So developers and engineers are going to be encountering AI for sure, and I think using it in their daily lives from a code generation perspective, but a little bit of caution is merited, and it's very early days, and I think it's the time for developers and engineers to be learning about these new things, rather than frantically thinking they need to adopt them from an enterprise perspective.
Yeah.
Or
That makes
you talk to, sorry, go ahead, Ed. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that one of the things that I would look at on that, I wouldn't disagree with any of those points you make.
You're about to disagree with them, I could tell.
No, I'm not. I'm not. What I'm saying is that they, you got to learn by doing. So
Mhm.
I think that the point that I would make, I think you hit it, which is like, well, somebody on your team needs to do that. What I've seen is that enterprises unfortunately have a lot of things on their plate,
Yep.
and it feels like there's only two speeds. Maybe it goes back to two-speed IT, right? Which is like now or never. And that's been the piece that I think, if you're one of the folks in the audience and you're an IT executive and you're looking for sort of that green flag of saying it's production ready now, I guarantee you that, by the time that we have those check boxes that say it is production ready, it's going to be too late. And so, but is it too soon now? Sure, absolutely. Yeah, you will get very hurt if you try to put this stuff in production now. And so the challenge is sort of, and that's where I would turn it back into is kind of, how do you, how do you adopt this stuff in a measured way that allows you to like learn by doing? Like you can't just, I don't actually think that, for example, any of the companies that waited until the web was safe, because I think, frankly, those folks are still waiting,
Mhm.
um, you know, came up with a great web strategy. I think it's a similar
That's,
challenge.
that's an awesome point.
Yeah, I think that's it's a really good point. And like all of these things, and it's so easy as a consultant to say this. I mean, it's a cultural transformation, right? So the point about the organizations that were able to make that transition was they were learning organizations, and they were ready to embark on sort of transforming themselves. And really, look, I mean, this isn't, well, there's nothing new, but I mean, in a sense, it's like if an organization is suddenly like, oh, now AI has arrived, now I need to be good at IT, probably a little bit late, right? So
Yes.
we spent the last, I mean, from an IT executive perspective, we were all embarking on digital transformation initiatives with varying degrees of success. Organizations that did a good job of that have strong digital skills, are better to engage with their customers and stakeholders using modern technology, that have invested in developers, that have brought things back, that have reshored, that are no longer using some of the more traditional sort of outsourcing methodologies, that did the work, that perhaps even got some DevOps skills, that are able to do agile, that have got product management focus. Those organizations are very well placed to start using AI tooling. Um,
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
so I think this is sort of really just the next step of a long journey. And yeah, look, you're absolutely right. We can't. I mean, here are some things that are worth considering. Like all of these waves. A, if you don't do it in the organization, someone else will. We saw this with open source. Oh no, we're not going to do open source. And then you go and talk to the network team, and they're like, we're using open source everywhere. We talk to line of business leaders, and they'd say, well, this cloud thing sounds okay, but I'll tell you, we would never put our customer data in the cloud. And then you talk to their Salesforce, and they're all running Salesforce.com, right?
Right.
We see this every single time. So if enterprise IT says, oh no, we're not doing it because the risks are great, to your point, well, someone else in the organization is just going to go and they'll like start vibe coding some shit and then hand that over and be like, you need to support this now. So it is going to happen. Ideally, as I say, the organization has a learning posture and culture, and that being the case, the other thing is just what a phenomenal time to be learning new stuff. There
Yeah.
are the watering holes are changing. It's a bit weird. We spend more and more time, asking questions of the AI than we had done historically. Um, but there's also brilliant leaders that are here to educate us and help us to understand what the opportunities are. And that's something that I have some pretty strong opinions on because it turns out learning. Um, let's get to that a bit then, Ed, because I
Yeah.
think
Well, I mean, clearly some things have changed, and I'll let Anant jump in a second. Sorry, but it was more just the interesting point out of the gate because the three of us have been doing this for a long time, and we have um, I would say for the most part, have been usually on the side of saying, here's this new technology, you should adopt it. Going back to whatever, some of us going back well before the
yeah,
Java days, and but whether it was the web or whether it was the cloud and all of that, and we, for the most part, not to overly stereotype all of us, but I think that, if it was, 15 years ago or whatever on cloud, we would have been like, we would have been like, don't listen to the people who say it's not production ready. Get out there and do cloud, or don't
yeah,
listen to the people who say mobile's ready. But this time around, some things have changed, and that was part of why I raised it because I have also made that same statement many times, which is like, be careful with this, and and I think we'll get into that in a little bit. But so things are, I think I agree. A lot of it is the same, a lot of these same adoption cycles, but there are some new things to it too, which is part of what makes it interesting and fun. But perhaps I think also it's scaring some folks too.
oh,
But
100%. I mean, old man shouts at AI, 100%. But I've got my daughter on side. Like, she's much more anti AI than me. She's 15, and she is
yeah,
like, AI is the worst thing ever. Last week I did a presentation on vibe coding, and I did use Chat GPT to generate an image, and she came and said, "Dad, you can't use that. That's not made by an artist. I'll draw one for you." Hers was better, actually. Um, but yeah, I do think that in this case some caution is merited. Particularly in a world we're talking about autonomous agents with loops that will keep trying something until it works. I mean, we
all,
grew
all,
up.
all good for Jensen. All great for
Yeah,
Jensen.
yeah, great for Jetson. We grew up with distributed systems, and we understood the concepts of thundering herds. Thundering herds is still real, right? We saw one just yesterday with Amazon falling over, right? I
yes,
mean, do we want agents to be making DNS changes across US East 1? Probably not. Now, I'm not saying it was an agent that made that fault, but what I would say is that, agents are amazing, and they're going to get more amazing, but just a little bit of caution and human in the loop might be called for.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, so going back to MCP, this is just a fascinating detour. All of us are showing our age, which in this case is good, I think. But uh, so if you go back to kind of our world of APIs that some of us learned, it's a very different world than the world of databases. So there was XML and SOAP. Before that, they were kind of regular interfaces, XML and SOAP. And then REST came about, and people said, no, look, you can't just layer REST on top of XML and SOAP. You've got to kind of rethink about what is the right architecture and right things, et cetera, et cetera. And that I think is largely borne out as kind of the right model anyway. In the world of MCP, for example, I'm seeing that people are also kind of taking the easy path, which says that, look, we have already invested a lot in our REST APIs, or, for example, our database interfaces, modulo, all comments from database folks. And so let's layer MCP on top of it, right? So in some ways, it's good because it helps people learn how language models will interact with backend systems using MCP. But is it also bad because the easy way out is the wrong way out? Because in reality, we should actually think through what is a fundamental change that needs to happen because of AI, as opposed to just yet another layer slapped onto all the things that were done in the past. And that's, I've just been thinking a bit about it because we've seen a lot of MCP slop out there built on kind of the API slop in some cases, and I'm not necessarily sure that that's the right path.
What, you think it's like Dr. Seuss's slop slop with a cherry on top? I think that could be.
I'm sorry, I wouldn't remember Dr. Seuss thing.
That
So
that
if you say that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
yeah, no, schlop for sure. So I mean, uh, whether or I mean, to your point, we've all been around long enough to know that chasing after a perfect architecture is definitely is a hiding to nothing. Thinking you mentioned XML. I mean, oh my God, trying to model every possible use case that we went on that the Death Star with the web services stack. I mean, that way madness lies, and we've seen it happen at individual company levels. IBM with SSA. If we could just find the once and future architecture that would glue everything together. It never happens. It's always going to be accretive. I mean, if we think about London as a city, I mean, sure, there are other cities where, perhaps a huge amount of the city was destroyed by fire or something like that. I mean, the city of London, I guess, after the Great Fire of London could do a rebuild, but generally it's layers upon layers. And, even after the rebuild, you still saw, or the reborn city still showed some of the pathways that from Roman times. Yeah, admittedly, there are some beautiful cities that have completely rebuilt. I mean, we look at sort of Paris. But yeah, generally, we're never going to rebuild a once and future gleaming perfect architecture. It's going to be messy. It's going to be driven by integration. It's going to be driven by, layers upon layers of stuff. And honestly, I think that's one of the things that AI is weirdly good at. It's one of the things that we're not particularly good at. I mean, AI, you throw it at a protocol and it's very, very happy to glue itself to that. I mean, that's one of the things that some of these integration tasks that over the years we've sort of been involved with that have been horrific. It turns out that LLMs, they just eat that up, and don't mind it at all. So yeah, we're going to see some
they also hallucinate on the way, but yes.
No, absolutely. But we're going to see some absolutely disgusting, though effective integrations happen. And I think that's just as it is. So yeah, isn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, no, it makes it. I mean, it has been a massive. We've talked about this before on the podcast, and obviously, I think it's a regular topic for all of us. Probably these days has been the massive uptake on MCP. I mean, some of it. I don't think it's just APIs reinvented. I mean, I actually think that it's easy for folks to think, particularly folks from an API background like all of us. We focus on the protocol part, and the most important part about MCP is the model context piece. And I think that that's the part that is where a lot of the interesting things happen. The reason why we're excited about all of this stuff is in the past, you would wire together these APIs, and then all the action would be, and a lot of the conversation would be, oh, do we use an integration server type product that IT people love, or do we expose it as APIs, and what is the developer form factor? And people like REST APIs because it was viewed as more developer friendly, although Anant, of course, would argue GraphQL was the best one. But now, like it's actually, it's all about it's your developer experience, but except that the developer is the model. Which is a super interesting change, but I think
you're anthropomorphizing the model now. Okay, awesome.
Well, I mean, I think that yes, I probably am, but I was trying to think of.
Models do make choices. Models do make choices. That is inarguable. Whether that's anthropomorphic or not, yes, models make choices. We ask them questions, they suggest things. the things they suggested are choices.
Hmm.
Whether they're based on a lot of choices that other people have made and documentation about choices doesn't matter. They're making
Yeah, yeah,
choices.
yeah, of course.
Which is the argument why models aren't just another tool. I was thinking about that quite a bit over the last couple of days. I think that somebody who I think we all follow and enjoy his writings, and it was a former coworker of mine, Anil Dash, wrote a nice post over the last few days. I think over the weekend. At least that's when I saw it, about viewing it as sort of the view it as just another tool. But um, even though we shouldn't anthropomorphize these, we shouldn't consider them living things. They do act in the non-determinism means that from a tool standpoint, if you were to compare it, you know, it's it's more like riding a horse than driving a car. It has whether it's the proper description of saying it has a will of its own, like you just said, it makes choices. And so it doesn't do like a tool where if you use,
Hmm.
the tool
Hmm.
the same
That's
way,
an
the
wow.
same way.
Today we are like, if we just get all the analogies out of the podcast today, it's like amazing. Absolutely, absolutely amazing.
We
So,
should get ChatGPT to write some analogies for us before the next session.
hey, so we wanted to also get into some topics on where how should a developer think about her existence going forward, right? And what right? So, Ed, you had some very very interesting questions that you wanted to ask of James in terms
Well,
of yeah.
it's interesting because I wanted to ask you these questions. I see when I talk to different developers, I see a whole continuum. I see some folks that are just like, oh, I tried it once and it didn't work.
Mhm.
Um, and then, I see folks who are
Giving lots
feeling a
of
lot.
money to Anthropic, giving lots of money to
Well,
Anthropic.
well, I do. Yeah, actually, that's true. I do see some that are just giving a ton of money to. I see a lot of startups doing that.
Yeah, they're bragging about how much they spend.
It's true.
We went from dev infrastructure was free
Yeah,
to, oh no, I'm effective because I spend $400 a day.
I no joke, no joke. Particularly
Really?
among.
Really?
I mean, not to get on a whole tangent on that, but I do run into startups where they go and they say, I've got 3 people on my team and we spend $400 a day on Claude Code. And by the way, I mean, they get good results. But that brings me to a couple of other pieces, which is I see other people who never get good results
Yeah.
from it, no matter how hard they try. And then I guess probably the final pieces. And then I also just talked to a lot of devs who are beginning to sound like JavaScript programmers were. Um, maybe it was actually, it's probably still the case for JavaScript programmers. This may always be an eternal thing, but it was
The
definitely the
framework
case.
war.
Yeah, the framework wars. It was like, oh my God, I didn't read Hacker News this morning, and there's a new JavaScript framework, and AI has definitely caught up with it, has vastly exceeded that. So that's just one of the cases was, or that was a long wind up on the fact that it's like, okay, you're a developer here late 2025, going into 2026. How do you not lose your mind without being branded a Luddite, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the path to sanity if you're a developer here? Is
Yeah.
there
I
one?
mean, yeah. Well, I think there is.
Yeah.
And it is my job to know all of that stuff that you're talking about. Oh my God, there's a new model. Oh my God, a new thing dropped. And it is constant.
So the answer is follow you on Twitter. This is the long and short of it.
No, I was going to recommend some other people that you should follow.
Yeah, okay.
But but yeah, the in we need lots of snakes there to digest all of this innovation. And we need sort of that is a thing, right? And we could, I guess, rely on, Christ, the models love to suggest they're going to summarize stuff for us. Yeah, they do. But it turns out some humans are very good at doing that. It's easy to, like, as a developer, kind of do what you love. I think one of the things that's really important is the chances are high that your skills are still relevant. Like, don't think, you mentioned sort of language framework choices. Don't think, oh my God, I'm a Java developer, and now everyone's telling me that I need to be writing in Python because that's the language of AI. Sure. I mean, OpenAI is a huge Python shop, undoubtedly, right? And Python has been a language that's driven AI forward, and there's a reason why Python, indeed, has sort of overtaken Java in some context from an industry perspective. Or look at TypeScript, absolutely crushing it. TypeScript, unbelievable how much adoption of TypeScript is. You're building dev tooling that touches AI, you're 100% using TypeScript. For God's sake, give me something that I can rely on. Give me the types. This is a language I can be productive in. TypeScript. Well, okay, that's all fine, right? This all sounds like, okay. But everyone's always saying, oh, you need to learn a new thing. Well, it turns out that, yeah, you're going to have to learn a new thing, but your existing skills are still relevant. So, at the moment, Rod Johnson, who founded the Spring Project, many, like Spring is just so many Java developers around the world use Spring every day, use Spring Boot. He did an amazing job of making Java a more productive environment. So he's currently building a framework for agent work called Imbabble. Now, Imbabble is a JVM language. And if we think about the things we learned about, okay, we've got one thing talking to another. This is enterprise integration pattern. We've got agents. Well, those are just services talking to one another. Why couldn't we be building them in Java? Now, of course, he's also looking at natural language. He's pulling all of that together. But right there, you've got the Java person. It's like, oh my goodness, what does this mean for me? Do I need to learn a new language? Java has shown an incredible... I mean, Java has the most amazing antibodies for swallowing innovation. I mean, there was a time it was like, oh, Java's dead. And then big data came along and they built all of the engines for big data in Java and JVM. Suddenly Scala was all over the place. Languages like Hadoop, frameworks like Hadoop. So Java is not done. And so, yeah, that's another, so you could be like, oh, and by all means, learn some JavaScript, learn some TypeScript. But that's not to say that Java skills aren't relevant. And then, further to that, don't follow me on Twitter because I don't really do that anymore. I have to lurk there because there is an important conversation happening there about development and dev tools in AI, which I have to understand because it's my job. I don't want to be there for some other reasons. Yes, I'm on Blue Sky, and by all means, follow me there.
Yes.
I'm one of the pragmatists, rather than AI haters. But there are some people that I think you should follow. Like, don't follow everyone. Don't be stressed about it, but get excited about the potential. And by all means, use AI in your daily work to become more effective. So another somebody that grew up out of the Java environment, Angie Jones, incredible technologist, incredible educator. So she's at Block now, and she's building a dev team, a DevRel team around their platform Goose. And I just think that the work she is doing, and one of her colleagues, Rizal, brilliant, educating people about what this new world is going to look like. And so Angie just wrote a piece, how DevRel is leading AI adoption. And she pointed out that actually, we went through a quick period in this industry where we're like, oh, DevRel's dead. You don't really need it anymore. You don't need to have people going to conferences and talking about technology. That's all they do. All we'll have is PLG now. We don't need DevRel. It turns out that DevRel is having a massive renaissance because AI needs education. And if you think about people that are capable of learning new things, building little proofs of concepts, trying all the new stuff, it doesn't matter if it breaks, they're going to learn it for demos, they're going to lead the company forward. You've got, a Java educator that is now leading the way on some really, really interesting agent work around Goose. So follow Angie. That would be, definitely one of the suggestions that I'd make. Every single time I go on any, anytime I go anywhere where I'm trying to help people understand without being, afraid or, to your point, oh, it doesn't work. Sorry, that's just wrong. It does work. LLMs do work. They can generate some good code. They don't always do it, but I don't know what to say if you're saying up is down and up is if you're telling me that AI can never do anything. Because you may have had bad experiences. Try again. Simon Willison, he is from the Python world, absolutely brilliant communicator. And if there's like one thing you read every day, go and check out what Simon has to say about what's going on. He will help you understand what technologies are likely to be ready for prime time, what's happening. Claire Vaux, behind a platform called ChatPRD, amazing communicator about the value of these AI tools from a business perspective. So she's building a product management tool using all of these models, all of the latest tools. Follow Claire. You'll get an entertaining, positive view of what works and what doesn't in this world of AI. Jesse Vincent, right? And so we're talking about generational stuff. Jesse Vincent, born 1976, in the Perl community, just doing brilliant work, helping people understand things like Claude's skills, and follow them. This list won't go on forever. I'd say Richard Sirota at Google, amazing, because he doesn't just take a googly view of the world. It's about education. And then finally, I will say that Kate Holterhoff and Rachel Stevens, who are both on my team, are doing some very, very good work helping people understand the tooling as it comes along. They're actually using the tools and helping to educate people. So, your skills are relevant. There are amazing educators that are just ready to help you. If you're struggling, go on the internet and ask these people, and they will help you. So I think it's really exciting. I got worried. To your point, Ed, and I was like, oh my God, have I got another revolution in me? When this bubble just started to expand, and we had this period of super expansion, I was like, am I really? I'm like the developers and practitioners matter guy. Am I really gonna? Do I have another rev in me? I think I do. And I think that your listeners and people viewing do. The reason they're watching your show is because they want to learn, and if they want to learn, they're going to get results. It's just an incredible time to be interested in learning about technology. And so I don't know if that was any answer to any question.
No, definitely. Yeah, it definitely was.
We should put a list of everybody mentioned by
we should do shout call outs in the
and then obviously James either comes on top or at the end of that list anyway. So that's super awesome. Ed, you or I should make to some list at some point in time, but clearly not. We are out there.
We got a lot of work to do. But we'll get there. Eventually, we will have something to share with people trying to learn about AI.
But also, look, I'll challenge you guys, right? So you work for IBM, and to this point you made, Ed, wait, we can't just be old man shouts at AI, right? That's not. I think one of the things is AI. I think one of the things that the haters kind of forget is that it's fun. One of the reasons people do stuff is the dopamine is incredible. Like vibe coding, the dopamine is unbelievable. When Midjourney hit and you were creating these images, it was like, oh my God, the dopamine spike. And yes, my daughter says that's not creativity. I get it, but it feels really good. And so we can't. I don't think we can bet against that stuff that feels good. But I do think from an IBM perspective, and push it back at you. You're like, wait, we can't tell people to not innovate. So how do you accelerate what you're doing? And I mean, I know, I know some of the answers to this because I'm seeing the work you're doing. But how do you maintain that trusted advisor position so that we could be in an environment like back in the day when IBM said, "Oh, you know what? Linux is ready for the enterprise," and the enterprise said, "Well, okay then, let's roll it out."
No,
When IBM said, "Well, okay, Java's ready for the enterprise," well, okay then, let's roll it out. And you have to worry about security reliability. So yeah, let me ask you, how do you still have that position? Do enterprises care what IBM thinks about this stuff? And if they do, how are you going to bring them on the journey? That's what I'd like to know.
So no, the answer to the first question is obviously yes, but I mean we have to kind of run hard at it every day because we are we are kind of look. You can bet your business on IBM, but we are not necessarily the cool kids, right? So how do you kind of where a lot of excitement and hype is around the coolness factor, right? Whereas enterprises run on can you bet on it? So that's a challenge that we face continuously. But I think that what we have got to do is to make sure that we help people with the realization of the value, and sometimes it's the boring stuff, sometimes it's not the boring stuff, right? So for example, announced another kind of a security focused IDE called Project Bob as kind of our cool offering out there. But we follow
Best
it
name,
up
by
with
the way, best name of an AI tool so far in the industry.
I,
Love that name.
I,
Bob. I'm 100% a Bob fan.
I,
I no issues with Bob. Nicely done.
absolutely. Some of our colleagues deserve credit for it, but I'll accept it on their behalf. But then the other side of it though is that in the end it is enterprise processes and enterprise security and enterprise this and that and everything else. So the what we want to do is always bring our customers back to look, in the end frameworks will come and go and there'll be a flavor of the day and everything else, but these things remain constant. And Ed and I talk a lot about what remains constant as opposed to what changes. And if we can kind of bring the energy back to what remains constant while making sure that we are still in the dialogue of what's changing through, for example, Project Bob or whatever else it is, then I think we'll do a phenomenal job. If we miss on either of those two sides, if we chase all that's sexy and exciting, or if we continuously focus on, look, you've got to have your meat and potatoes before you can have your pudding, to use the Pink Floyd song, right? Then I think we are going to from me. I love that, by the way, and even though I'm a vegetarian, but so that's a basic balancing act that we've got to do.
Yeah, well, I'm relatively new to IBM at this point, but one of the things that I've always had a huge amount of respect for IBM has been that it's done a very good job of bringing its customers along at key points in the technology journey, going back obviously since its very early days, but just even during the course of of my career, seeing what it did in terms of bringing businesses online on the web, bringing people into the Java world, bringing people with strategies around cloud native, around Kubernetes, around all of these technologies, and IBM has played a big role on it. I think that for me personally, I've worked in enterprise for a while, and the thing that I tell people. That I continue to tell people is, you have to learn by doing. You have to figure out how, in a measured way. You don't swing toward. Don't be that person who's like, oh, it's not ready yet. Call me in 5 years. But also don't feel the need to jump on saying, okay, we're going to bet the business on this new technology. But how do you make sure that you develop the capabilities, the skills, the point of view that comes from having your people experimenting, building that knowledge, have seen that time and again for the enterprises. There are plenty of, digital transformation we all live through. In hindsight, in the rearview mirror, it was a very real thing. We do business, we all do, with most of the major enterprises that we engage with, that we buy things from, that we bank with, that we, interface with healthcare systems on, that we, that whether it's telcos, whether it's whatever. Look, every one of those is now our primary mechanisms of interaction are now mediated through digital, through mobile, which is what digital transformation was principally about. And it's now a commonplace thing. By the way, it was not prior to that digital transformation inflection point. At the course and speed before that, it was not, right? And so thing happened, technology changed, the means of building changed. The companies that adopted that early on are the ones that are around. There's a whole set of companies that are no longer around that were the laggards on them. AI will be a similar thing. And the way that you are going to chart your course for it, whether you are a developer at an enterprise, whether you are an IT leader, whether you're an innovation leader, whether you're the business leader, it's going to be, did you develop the capabilities to navigate this? And that comes from doing. So those, my advice continues to be to people like, okay, like, is AI ready yet? Is AI production ready yet? Well, it will be eventually. Unless, you listen to Gary Marcus or others, I think most of us feel that there will be that point in time. If it's 1 year out, whether it's 2 years out, for some people, it's clearly now. In fact, for some people, it was a year ago. But what are you doing to get there? And don't start with your most important project, but start with something. Spend some time. How much time if you're a developer or manager, how much time did you actually spend in building with something and trying out Claude Code and trying out, these
Awesome.
development tools? So
Yeah.
that would be how I would respond to your challenge.
And I would say again, the other thing is that one of the reasons I think we are very bullish about it is that that we continue to get a kind of reinvention of ourselves. I mean, as IBM has reinvented itself several times, it doesn't mean that just because it's been done in the past, it will be true. But we can see right in the middle, right? I can't imagine. Again, this is not about tooting our own horn, but I can't imagine a podcast like this 10 years back where we would invite even competitors and others, or for us to use tools and act as developers. Oh my God, I'm the CTO. I only tell people what to do. I don't actually do, right? And all of that kind of makes me very, very bullish with respect to what we are going through. But again, as they say, future is yet to be written, but we are bullish about it. Awesome. Thank you so much. As Car Talk would say, we have wasted perfectly good 1 hour. No, we haven't wasted a perfectly good 1 hour. It's just been absolutely awesome. So James, thank you so much. Okay. And any parting thoughts, James?
No, just thanks a lot for having me. I mean, I guess I'll end up with some thoughts from Charity Majors, founder of Honeycomb. And one of the things she talks about in this new world is and it gets to, we talk about vibe coding. As Simon Willison says, vibe coding is fine and good, but it's for things that are low stakes, right? So what are the things that are high stakes? It's kind of our role as technologists and as businesses to understand the stakes, right? What is high stakes and what is low stakes, and where we can experiment, and where we need to be more measured. So Charity, in thinking about that, has begun to talk about the difference between disposable systems and durable systems, right? Now, some of those durable systems, IBM knows a bit about them. They're things like Sabre, right? Or the Visa or MasterCard back ends. These are things where they're not really amenable to vibe coding. And I think that one of the big things that we're as an industry going to have to work out is helping customers to truly understand what is low and high stakes, and therefore what is disposable and what is durable, and so that we can build accordingly. It's a
Yeah.
great model. The only problem is that realistically, as we all know, you build something that you thought was throwaway, and then 15 years later, someone calls you up and they're like, "What was this thing, and how does it work?"
Good.
So
You throw the latest LLM at it, and it'll tell you how it works. Okay, that
we
will be
hope
Yeah.
so.
super good.
We
Uh,
might resurrect if we go too far down this road, we'll get on the topic of two-speed IT, which will really tell us we came full circle, and that might be one for another day.
No, there's
okay.
nothing new in IT, my friends.
Uh,
Exactly.
okay. Absolutely awesome, James. Again, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
It was great to have you here.
That was absolutely a fascinating conversation. I've been keeping a running total of all the people mentioned that we should actually catch up on. I mean, obviously, I knew a few, Anil and Simon and a few others, but
Yes.
it'd just be super duper awesome. So, any parting thoughts, Ed?
Well, I mean, it's always a privilege to get to chat with James. Lots of folks talk about developers, developer experience, all of the pieces around it. But James is one of the few people who has really studied this and provided many companies and so on with advice on this. So having the opportunity to pick his brain on some of these topics has been fantastic. I feel like some of the themes were ones that again we've talked with James about in the past, and you and I have talked many times, which is that part about learning while doing, having that mindset of trying this stuff out, and that's really the piece that I think probably most people who have stuck around with us to the 1 hour mark are probably don't need to be told that. They're probably hopefully are people that are actually doing and trying this stuff. But what I would suggest would be that as they sort of spread the word to their colleagues and so on. One of the things I pointed out to you, Anant, the other day is I've actually heard from people who are very experienced, very skilled technologists who I have a lot of respect for, who do find who do find some challenges and do deal with these things. And so I think we need to pay attention to that and share, really sort of, develop what's generally called the community of practice, which is just sharing what works and what doesn't. And like James suggested, follow the people who are out there sharing this stuff. I think that's the path to being productive with it.
Awesome. We've got another doozy of an episode coming up. We'll have a discussion on how do developers who are used to very precise instructions deal with this random thing called prompt, which is
Yes.
all extremely loosey-goosey, and how do you kind of bridge the gap? And we'll have David Cox out there. But it's time for us to bid goodbye. But once again, we need to thank James, of course, but also Hannah Press and Milan Higginbotham
Yes.
for hopefully making this whole episode look good. So thank you, folks.
Thanks.